Good afternoon, everyone. I will now call this meeting of council to order on March 20th, 2024 at 5 p.m. I'll start with the land acknowledgement statement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all as treaty people live with respect on this land, live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Moving on to the approval of the agenda or additions to the agenda. Due to Councillor Coburn's absence this evening, we're going to speak to her notice of motion at a future meeting. So deferral is recommended on that, item 6.1. And staff are asking for council support to add closed session item to the agenda under open meeting exemption E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board for an update concerning ongoing litigation. So the recommendation is that item 6.1 be deferred to the April 10th meeting of council and that an additional closed session item be added to provide a verbal update on ongoing litigation under open meeting exemption E of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, and that the agenda be approved as amended. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Shouldice, Councillor Winters. Is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, you may declare at any time if one should arise. Moving on to minutes of previous meetings. You'll note that there's minutes in here for January 10th. Those were overlooked, so we're passing those ones this evening along with the March 6th. So the recommendation is that the minutes of the council meetings held on January 10th, 2024 and March 6th, 2024 be adopted. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Shouldice. Is there any discussion? We'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. And 5.2.1, the recommendation is that the minutes of the special council meeting held on March 13th, 2024 be adopted. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Winters, Deputy Mayor Pringle, is there any discussion? We'll call the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Does any member wish to make an announcement? None, we will move on. We have no public hearings, delegations, and public question period. For items on the agenda, any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item on the agenda shall make written application to the clerk by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. To register, go to www.georgianbluffs.ca delegations or call the clerk's office at 519-376-2729 extension 603. And for items not on the agenda, the same instructions, but by Thursday, the Thursday preceding the meeting that you wish to speak at. And this evening, we have a delegation from Ontario Pump Storage Project, Clark Little, TC Energy. So welcome. If you would like to come to the podium, you will have 10 minutes to provide comment. And welcome. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you very much for having us. TC Energy, I want to thank you for sharing some thoughts about the Ontario Pump Storage Project this afternoon. My name is Clark Little, and I'm giving this presentation today on behalf of our project director, Mr. John Mickelson, who, is that better? Yeah. I can hear myself, that's for sure. Who sends his sincere regrets for not being able to attend in person. I'm also here, to help me is Sarah Beasley behind me, our project head of communications. I keep calling her our director of communications, and she can't say that. It's not my title. And Mr. Herb Shields, our project's team lead for external affairs. But importantly, Herb is also responsible for all of the Indigenous relations initiatives as they apply to this project. Together, we're available to answer any questions you may have after the presentation. And I'm just going to leave that slide up and talk for a couple of minutes, well, longer. And then as you have questions, we have slides that we can bring up to hopefully address your questions. So the Ontario Pump Storage Project represents a number of things. It represents a meaningful and essential step toward fulfilling the province's stated policy to decarbonize the Ontario electrical grid by 2025, pardon me, 2035. It represents a groundbreaking and generational step in our collective journey toward Indigenous reconciliation, and it represents and offers a once-in-a-generation opportunity to pursue a local energy solution that will create jobs and stimulate the local economy. When I say local, I mean local regionally, the economy. The rationale for this project continues to get stronger and stronger every year. As you know, maybe last year, Ontario's population grew by 450,000 people last year on forecast, and that number is expected to grow. That's like adding the population of the City of London to the electrical grid every year. At the same time as Ontario is growing, it is electrifying. That is their policy. Electric vehicles, heat pumps, transit, electric transit, clean steel production making, and new major investments by corporate companies like Stellantis, Volkswagen, and Honda are all adding to the province's demand for electricity. The Government of Canada is prioritizing efforts to combat climate change also, with the goal of achieving a net zero electrical grid by mid-century. That will require Ontario to eventually close its gas-fired plants and replace them with new clean energy. Combined, these forces will drive the need for Ontario to double its supply, double it by 2050. We cannot and will not get to a net zero grid without massive amounts of electrical storage. Under any future scenario for Ontario, whether it goes the nuclear route or the renewable route or both, Ontario will need energy storage to be able to balance and operate its extending and expanding clean energy system. The electrical system that all of us rely on is becoming more dependent on a day-to-day basis. We're putting more pressure on a day-to-day basis. From an environmental perspective, pumped hydro storage is hands down the most proven and environmentally responsible energy storage solution to meet these emerging needs. Multiple countries in the world account for over 150 storage facilities like ours in either development or operation. They can't all be wrong. At its heart, this project is a climate change initiative, a clean energy initiative that will assist with an orderly transition away from Ontario's reliance on fossil fuel generation. And we're already witnessing the impacts of climate change, the implications of which are particularly amplified for those that live around Georgian Bay. This winter marks the lowest ice cover on Georgian Bay in recorded history, and the climate change is arguably the biggest single threat to Georgian Bay. Fluctuating water levels, severe and more frequent storms, flooding, wastewater and stormwater overflows, changes to the habitat, and God forbid, severe droughts and forest fires are the real threats to Georgian Bay, and they're all driven by climate change. Not only is this a climate change project, but it also represents one of the largest Indigenous reconciliation initiatives currently underway in Canada. If this project moves forward, it will be through a partnership with the SON. And significantly, we have made a commitment that we will not proceed with this project without SON support and participation. When I say support and participation, I'm focusing largely at this point on the environmental side of it. SON will have a significant equity ownership and have an active role in the management and the environmental stewardship of the project. And we have made commitments already to ensuring SON has opportunities for employment, skills training, contracting, and supplying to the project. Through their ownership in the project, a stable long-term source of income will be created for the nations that would have significant impacts improving their infrastructure, services, and the quality of life within their communities. This project will be a source of pride and a key to their future economic self-determination. I heard Chief Najwan speak on this at the Clean Energy Frontier. I believe you were there also. So you understand fully where he's coming from. You could feel the energy in the room and understand how important this is to his nation. So the Saugeen has a very special relationship with Georgian Bay, and they have the responsibility as caretakers of the land and waters within their territory to protect it, as they've been doing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. For Saugeen, the waters bring life and sustain life. Their relationship with the bay is sacred, and they have a duty to care and to protect the water. Let me be clear, say it again, the Saugeen Nation will not allow this project to move forward if they cannot demonstrate that we are protecting Georgian Bay. That's why Saugeen has a leading role in the design of the project. That's why for the past several years, they have been doing their own independent environmental assessment review, which includes discussions with Saugeen and Nawash fishers, whose livelihood depends on the health of the bay. They know the bay better than anyone else. They know what is good for the bay. Our opponent, who's not here today, and I'm surprised, talks about the role of another pump storage project in Michigan called the Ludington Pump Storage Facility. And there's been a lot of comments from that side about how this project is damaging to the environment. Moreover, a lot of misinformation. People's perspectives are it could kill tourism, it could kill the economy, it would be bad for all those things. So I just want to say that we have visited, I want to bring this up because it's a popular theme that we hear, but we have visited Ludington on the ground to learn from their experience. As a direct result of our review of Ludington, and more importantly, the feedback that we've received from the public, including vocal opponents, we completely redesigned the project here in 2021. Unlike Ludington, all major facilities in our design are effectively placed underground or underwater, and our inlet-outlet system, a system that actually interacts with the water in Georgian Bay, is state-of-the-art when it comes to protecting fish habitat, and water quality of Georgian Bay. One of the other aspects that's different from Ludington is that Ludington performs a very important function in the electrical system in his home state. This is Mr. Tom Buck of Michigan. I always like chatting about him when he's listening to me on the video. That is a critical resource in balancing Michigan's electrical system, and is especially important to integrating the renewable energy that Michigan has and is planning to add. And that's demonstrated because the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in the United States just relicensed Michigan, or 2019, for a further 50 years of operation. So they certainly see some value in the concept or in the technology for supporting their electrical grid. In the community, Ludington's mayor, Mark Barnett, expressed in person how the facility's tax revenues and local spending have helped Ludington keep their schools, roads, and services open and well maintained. He also noted that Ludington's robust seasonal tourism and recreational boating and fishing industries in Lake Michigan are supported by the facility, and they do things like they have scenic lookouts and trails, a fisheries trust that supports the thriving recreational fishing community, and employees and families who come to Ludington on vacations year-round. I would encourage you to reach out to Mayor Barnett if you have any questions about his perspective of how a facility of this size and this scope will impact the local economy and the region. Batteries. We continue to hear no discussion about pumped hydro storage would be complete without a discussion about batteries. We continue to hear arguments that we should be considering battery storage technology in lieu of pumped hydro storage. I'd just like to take a minute, if I have it, to address this briefly. There is no question in our mind that batteries have an important role in Ontario's electrical system. In fact, the Ontario government has already started to process applications for and development of battery storage facilities in southwestern Ontario. We need a diversity in our system, and batteries will provide an important function. So it's not a case of either us or batteries. It's a case of our process and our facility and batteries. The role of batteries and our facility, our concept, and is very different. Batteries are suitable for very short durations, operating for a maximum of 4 hours, versus our project will produce 10 plus hours. And both are needed for the integration of additional nuclear and renewable capacity assets. Lifespan of batteries, however, is much shorter, maybe 15 to 20 years with the current technology. Our operating lifespan is 80 years plus. And there are other challenges with batteries. A global supply chain strategically that is currently dominated by China, and which is currently causing some real problems and will probably get worse in the future. In Ontario, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture is not a fan of anything that's going to take up precious agricultural land. And therefore, their appreciation of our facility is that they'll take that over batteries any day, because we're not damaging, impacting, or affecting any agricultural land. When it comes to long duration energy storage, this is the optimal solution for Ontario. The life cycle costs and the cost of a negative environmental footprint to replicate our project using batteries would be significantly higher when you look at the life cycle of the technologies. What I'm saying is the carbon footprint of a battery, of a 50-year or 80-year battery solution, is orders of magnitude greater than our carbon footprint over the same time. It seems a little ironic that we would be spending a lot of money on batteries and increasing the carbon deficit by orders of magnitude. But it's needed in the short term. The reason for that is that the precious metals that go into batteries and the offshore manufacturing of those batteries, the transportation of them, the installation of them, and the cyclical replacement of them, and ultimately the disposal of those batteries, is a lot more greenhouse gas dependent than we are. They generate a lot more of it. We are encouraged by the steps that the Ministry of Energy has taken in their January 9th letter. This project, in their words, must benefit all Ontarians. We need to make sure this project provides an overall economic benefit for Ontario before it moves forward. And the process that we're undertaking right now with the Ontario government is moving those milestones forward. We continue to work with the Ministry of Energy and Ontario Energy Board to establish a long-term commercial framework. We expect our asset to be rate regulated, which is the same at all of the other assets in the province. That is the best solution for this is a monopoly. The power business in Ontario is a monopoly. That is the best structure that protects residents and businesses with cost, prudency, transparency, flexibility, fairness, and the lowest possible cost. It's negotiated on a routine basis. The development of new energy projects can be very challenging and change can be hard, but we have a responsibility collectively to think about the big picture, keep that in mind, the long term, and make meaningful steps now for a better future. Our project represents a tangible, low-risk solution that actually addresses the growing threat of climate change, especially to Georgian Bay. It also represents a meaningful and real, tangible initiative in support of our local Indigenous neighbors. That'll pretty well wrap up my my formal words. I'd like to opportunity to share a dialogue about any questions you have. I would encourage you to read the report Powering Ontario's Growth, which is the policy document that states in part that electrical storage is valuable and needed. And with that, I think I'm probably over. I'm not sure. I would be happy to answer any questions with the benefit of some slides. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And so we are over. So I'm just wondering, should we have a motion to waive the procedural bylaw to allow this to continue? So we're okay? Okay. So questions? Right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Clark, for the presentation there. There's a lot of information in there too. And the one part that caught me was on the battery storage side of things. What I did read an article not long ago about what it's really costing us to produce those batteries. Like it's astronomical what it's putting back into the atmosphere and global warming and climate change and all the rest of it. So I was really glad to hear you speak to that. It seems very opposite of the direction we really want to go to get to that point. That's with the costs and what we're doing to the climate on that piece. So I just want to comment on that. And with things going the way they are, are they still anticipating hitting their timeline to move this whole project forward, or is it slowly getting day by day, getting farther and farther away for you?
Well, it's, you know, the phrase 2 steps forward and 1 back. It's like everything else in life. You get headed in one direction and you get slowed down a bit. We're still on track to produce power by 2033, which is a decade and less than a decade. A lot has to happen. And we have a very aggressive timeline for that. So that's our target. 10 years from last year. So we're 9 years away. You know, we're just going to do the best we can to make those timelines stick. It's in everybody's benefit that we do that. And we're anticipating to get moving with our largest and most important initiative. We don't decide whether our facility is environmentally sound. The governments do. And the Federal Impact Assessment Act will start, we're comfortably saying, by the end of this year, maybe before winter. That would be December, but before fall or in fall. And the sooner we get that started, then we get that process behind us. That's an exhaustive process that will last several years. And it's within that process, they will determine whether or not this project is in the best interest of the citizens. That's the criteria. And it's so as we get into that at the end of the year, then all of these questions are going to come back up again for formal reply. And everybody, including yourself as an individual or the council as a group, will be able to submit questions and concerns. I don't expect we'll get a lot of people writing in saying, get on with this, you're wasting time. But just in case anybody felt that way, that would be helpful. But that's the next big step for us. We get into that process.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
I have more than one question. Is that okay? Okay. Hello, thank you so much for coming. Out of anything in Grey Bruce, I feel like I have more questions about this project than a lot of other topics that are in the news and on people's minds. Sure. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today and ask some of those questions. Can you clarify with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, is it, I really appreciate the work that you're doing to have such ongoing and in-depth communication with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation and really ensuring their voices are a big part of this process. I've been left a little bit unclear whether or not there's a formal agreement in place or it's still a work in progress. There's a relationship and you're working towards a formal agreement.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll respond to that on behalf of TC Energy. As my colleague mentioned, I'm Herb Shields, team lead in external relations for the pump storage project. So to your question, Councillor Day, we do have an agreement with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation now called a Pathways Agreement. And that Pathways Agreement establishes key expectations that both prospective partners must fulfill in order to maintain the relationship, in order to get to a partnership agreement through a community-based decision-making process that the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation is still going through. So this is not a partnership yet, but both parties are working towards that partnership. And we have an outlined plan as to how we get to that process.
Thank you. And then my next question isn't about the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. If you want to hand the mic back to Mr. Little. I've heard a lot of questions about unexploded ordnance, and I imagine that's part of the environmental impact assessment or the military's role in this. But if you could speak to how that risk will be managed, I would appreciate it.
Screen. Boy, oh boy, I tell you. So on the right-hand side of that, you see an overhead of the 4th Canadian Division Training Center. And it is highlighted with a yellow line, and that little blue kidney-shaped thing is the reservoir, which has to be excavated. Right? So the question is, what is the risk of excavating a unexploded weapon or excavating soil that has been previously contaminated? And in that particular part of the range of that landmass, we can say with confidence and supported by the Treasury Board's, they have a registry called the Federal Land Registry, and it's every federal property and building, no matter what it is. You go in there and search on Meaford, and you'll get a map of that facility, and it'll show probably 10 contaminated sites, and they are represented by different colors like stoplight system. Red means we've found one, we haven't got to it yet, still needs mitigating. Yellow means we're in the process of sorting it out, and black means we've sorted it out. On their registry, real time, as of Monday is the last time I looked at it, there was one black dot in that kidney-shaped area. One site that the Defense Department has determined has contamination. So we're comfortable, so the reason that is because the big guns that have fired up there since 1942 fire in the northwest direction. They fire toward the top left corner of that. And we're far enough away from that, a couple of kilometers away from it. And they've never used heavy weapons to our knowledge in this area. So the risk of coming across something in the process of constructing it is low, because at the moment there's only one example of an environmental contamination inside that kidney. So we're pretty confident that there's a good chance we're not going to run into anything when we start excavating. The excavation, we asked a couple of days ago, because this came up in more detail. The land, the depth of soil in that part of the range is roughly, on average, I was told 1 foot. Sorry, I don't work in meters, but too old for that, but 1 foot, which means what they get under that is solid bedrock, hardscape. So first of all, I'm ex-military. I've had 31 years in the Air Force, and my specialty was Air Force weapons, big weapons. And I think I can say safely that one of our weapons coming onto the target at hundreds and hundreds of knots or kilometers an hour onto this ground would bounce, would go into the earth and come up, and it would tumble until it landed and be visible. I can't imagine with what's built there to have anything 10 feet down that we stumble. It's not like digging subway tunnels in London, England. It's not like that, because that land was never used for it. But if we find something in the process of excavating, then we will treat it as any other company would treat a contaminated soil, with the regulations that are in place in the construction industry. So I'm not too sure whether how did I do with that? I don't think we got a problem, right? And D&D and ourselves have been in negotiations about this topic for 4 years plus now. So we're pretty comfortable with their position, and they're pretty comfortable with us in the concept that if we have a problem, we're going to work together to solve it in some way, shape, or form, to be decided at a later date. But that issue will be addressed in much more detail than I just gave you during the environmental assessment.
Along those lines, in terms of military connections, military bases sometimes provide this unintended consequence of providing habitat for endangered species because the land isn't used for too many other things. So from what I understand, there are some endangered species in the woodland that would need to be removed. And I imagine more information will come out of the environmental assessment, but
We will address that. I will say that for what we've, and they keep, for the last 3 years, they've been walking the ground in there looking for species at risk. Chorus frogs is one of them. There's a tree species and so on. I think we've got a pretty good idea what's in there. And the next step is to figure out how we can mitigate that, right? We'll have to be able to demonstrate that to the environmentalists, federal people. So that's all going to come out of the environmental assessment. Keep in mind that this facility uses 3% of the land on that base, 3% of the total area. It's not, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. We have to find out what's there and then figure out how we can work together. I mean, together to mitigate the problem. That would be part of the environmental assessment. I wish I had more to give you, but I don't. Not today.
I'm a proponent of thinking from cradle to grave for products and their use. So I think you said 80 years that this, yes, I take notes. So 80 years from now, decommissioning, or the date when this would be decommissioned, what would have to happen to return the land or keep the land in a stable state?
So the majority, do I have? Majority, slide number is it? 3? We have another cross section of this? 4, please, there. So there's a cross section of the facility concept at the moment. I say at the moment, the design has not been locked down. But essentially all of the major infrastructure with the exception of the reservoir is underground. And it's been done deliberately to minimize the impact on flora and fauna that are on the ground, right? So, so that's the starting point. The other thing I want to say is that I'm not sure if anybody understands the true length of time one of these things can operate. In Europe, they've been operating over 100 years. We're late to the game. Canada is pretty late to that game. But major overhauls of the turbines and the pumps and stuff that tend to go with use, seal start to break and so on, would be regular maintenance. And I can say that we're going to be in business for at least 50 or 80 years. And it's just after that, it's a question mark. We don't have an idea yet of what that long-term maintenance would look, and certainly a decommissioning, it'll be part of the IA process. We put some thoughts into it, but I'm not sure we have a lot of details about it. So, but it's part of our list of things we're very conscious of and very interested in. I mean, we have to have a plan. We have to understand what that is. And moreover, the public has to understand that, see what it would look like. The bigger problem on the range is not ours. The bigger problem, slide 7. Bigger problem is the impact area from the guns that are firing, which is so I guess what I'm saying is that it's barring any act of God of some sort, this land will always be used for military use. It can be very expensive and very, very difficult to remediate it completely. Who knows what will happen with respect to it long term. So, give any more detail, Herb? I don't know of any. We'll have a plan, and it'll be in the IA. But right now, that's all I can give you. We're conscious of it for sure. One of the big things is the trees, right? We have to cut some number of trees, like old growth deciduous trees, and we're already talking about where do we and how do we plant replacements soon enough that they can start contributing to the cleaning the atmosphere? We don't want to put 6-inch saplings and it'll take 10 years before they're, our people are thinking about that already.
And I apologize because I was taking notes and I realized I might have missed something that I want to ask a question about.
Sure.
So if you said this earlier, I'm sorry I didn't
it's
catch
okay.
it while you were speaking. From your presentation that I flipped through, it looks like there will be 1,000 well-paid union jobs
Mhm.
during construction, which is great in many, many, many ways, and also poses a housing challenge for communities where there's already housing shortages. So any thoughts about how to solve that problem collaboratively with partners, I'm sure, or more independently, perhaps?
The housing, we are at this stage still haven't nailed down the precise numbers yet. We're not quite there yet. It's because we need engineering firms who are going to build this to be involved in that process, and we're still in the process of bringing large engineering firms on board to build this thing. So we're a little bit away of knowing whether that's 1,100 or whether it's 900 or what that really looks like. Housing is on everybody's mind, and we have some ideas about how to do it. But largely speaking, if the communities are looking for us to be part of a housing solution, we need to sit down and talk about that. What's possible with developers, with politicians, with citizens. I'm under the understanding that Owen Sound is going to be doing a information session sometime in April, maybe May, about this issue. We will be at it, talking about our needs to the best we can, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about some ideas that I know other people have on how to approach the housing challenge. I'll just stop there because I don't want to get ahead of TransCanada's headlights, but there's some innovative ideas coming out of an organization called Imagine Meaford, which is kind of a development watchdog on runaway development in Meaford. They've got some interesting ideas about how housing could be approached on a collaborative basis, and we're excited to have those conversations as we move forward in the time. So people always want definitive answers. I'm not being evasive. I just say keep your ear to the ground about this thing coming up in April or May. And I believe that invitations will be going out to the municipalities to attend and contribute.
My last question is fairly open-ended. Life is full of risk. Whatever we do has risk to it. School buses were canceled at the last minute today because of weather. There's the most commonplace activities have risk to them. So I'm always interested in open answers about what risks are involved with a project and how those risks are mitigated. So I guess my fairly open-ended question here is, as someone who is much more informed about this project than I am, what are the risks that you're concerned about? You have a lot of information about the project. What risks should we, there's many things we could think about, and I'm sure some people bring ideas up that you think, oh, that one's not so bad. But I wonder if in your minds there are risks you'd be able to talk to us about that are serious and would need to be mitigated throughout the longevity of the project.
Thank you. Through the chair, regarding risks, the first and foremost, I think risk for this project is that this is not a project. This is a concept at this point. Many people still have to say yes for this to happen. First and foremost, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation must go through a community-based decision-making process in order for this project to proceed. Ontario has to decide that the ratepayer value and the broader societal benefit of having long duration storage is advantageous to Ontario. The federal government has to ensure that the Department of National Defense can continue to train troops and advance the sovereignty of Canada while having this facility provide clean energy to Ontarians. And then lastly, Meaford. Meaford is our host municipality. We have a conditional motion of support from the municipality. And I do stress that is conditional. It is conditional on us fulfilling our federal impact assessment requirements, conditional on meeting the community betterment agreement expectations of Meaford. And it is only through those conditions that we maintain that support. There are many risks to this project, but it is only a concept at this time. So I'll leave it at that to stress that as we go through this process, we'll only be doing it in partnership with those people I've identified. Thank you.
Those are all my questions. Thank you so much for answering them all. And this is such an interesting question because I value the efforts to reduce our carbon footprint greatly.
Thank you, Councillor Day, for those questions. Councillor Winters.
Thank you. Just one quick question, and we had a previous presentation here months ago, and I'd asked the question, but it's still in the heart of my mind. The original concept, I think, was a tunnel that was 12 meters in diameter and 50 some kilometers long, if I'm not mistaken, plus or minus. That'll generate a lot of excess material coming out of a tunnel. And where do you see the vision of that excess material? Where is it going? Is it changing the look of the landscape? Is it being commercialized and sold off? Or how do you see that being handled?
Through the chair, I may be able to clarify and answer some of those other questions, Councillor. So maybe go to the cutaway slide, if that's possible, slide 6 or slide 5 to provide a visual, or slide 4. Back a little, and to like the beginning of the presentation, and then the next slide over. So to answer your question, Council, regarding 50 kilometers, that 50 kilometer reference is to our proposed transmission line options. So we've been studying, based on actually feedback from local cottagers and the Indigenous nations, a lake bed buried transmission cable route, basically from like the military installation across Nottawasaga Bay, roughly 50 kilometers, to Wasaga Beach. And there, that cable line would make landfall. It would continue to be buried and be a buried cable line from Wasaga Beach to Stainer, so roughly 8 kilometers or so, where there's a Hydro One transformer station. So that is an option that we've been studying, as well as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation has been studying for that concept. So that's where the 50 kilometer reference comes to. So that is not a tunnel, but really just a cable line route that we've been discussing. Regarding actual tunnels, yes, our construction technique that we're proposing is a proven construction technique, tunnel boring machines, so roughly 12 meters in diameter, something the size of a subway tunnel, and that would be on the military base. So from roughly 7th line going into like the Niagara Escarpment to create an artificial cavern, you can see with our pump house and powerhouse, and then excavation of like the upper reservoir. So regarding surplus aggregates, our engineering teams are still trying to determine how you maximize the use of aggregates if you're already extracting them already on site. We already know that there will be surplus. It's a question of what kind of surplus, is what kind of shale, what kind of aggregate is it? What is the market for it? What is the most safest, most environmentally responsible way to dispose of that? And what is the quality of it? That is why we're doing right now borehole sampling on the military base to understand exactly what that geology is, what that aggregate will be, and then that will determine then what kind of surplus and disposal that we can have of that. So there are, again, like Clark, I'm not trying to evade your question, but there are just questions around that. What we can confirm is we are continuing to study it.
Yeah, thank you. That clarifies that. But yeah, I think in one of the previous, as a year or so ago, we were kind of told that there was a large diameter tunnel underneath Georgian Bay, which was kind of an alarming thing. But if it's a direct buried cable, it's a different situation, right? So, yeah.
Yes, yeah, and yeah, thank you, Councillor, for that. And just to be absolutely crystal clear, there's that lake bed cable, 50 kilometers. There will be tunneling on the military installation and that underground water interaction. You'll see that loop that loop would be an underground tunnel system, again, using tunnel bored machines. But again, that's highly localized to like the military installation and like the hazard zone around like the military installation.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for the presentation and thank you for all of your answers and look forward to seeing how things move forward.
Thank you very much for your time. And if you have questions, please contact us. And if you want us to come back and elaborate on anything in more detail, let us know. We'll be welcome to come back. And if you're ever in Meaford on a Thursday, you can drop into one of our coffee chats and sit down and talk with us face to face in any detail you want, as long as we have information to say. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here and I hope we've helped your understanding.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Are there any items to be pulled? Councillor Winters?
Thank you. If I may, I would like to pull. Sorry, it just gave me at this point in time. Information reports 9.4. Specifically 9.4.1 and 9.4.2 for discussion, please.
Anyone else? Okay. Councillor
I
Shoulders?
wasn't going to, but you know what? I will pull 9.3.1 tier firefighters and search and rescue.
Go ahead, Councillor Day.
9.3.6, Town of Coburg's affordability of water and waterway systems.
Okay, and I would pull 9.3.10. And 9.3.11. So I will read the recommendation that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs adopt the consent agenda for information as circulated, less items 9.4.1, 9.4.2, 9.3.1, 9.3.6, 9.3.10, and 9.3.11. And that all items contained therein are hereby approved. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Day and Councillor Winters. I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. So 9.4.1, Councillor Winters.
Thank you. Sorry about that. It's a great report, but as I was reading it, and I think I was the one that actually had asked for this a year or so ago. I'm wondering if we can consider small administrative change to make it a little easier, a little cleaner, and maybe to solve more of the objective that I was looking at. Something really just chart form based, which said here's the task that's been here. Here's when it was assigned. Is it ongoing? Is it completed? What's the estimated completion time? Just more of a chart is kind of what I had really visualized when I had asked for that. I mean, this is good, but it would be nice to know, okay, where are we at in the status of things? It's a good report, but just looking for some discussion with my colleagues here and whether or not that benefits everybody.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
For you, Mayor Carlton, we had considered the idea of a chart. However, charts are inaccessible. So we avoid charts where we can, but we could certainly add some context about the status of the project. And I will allow us to be able to elaborate further.
I've got some feedback on that. Good evening, and to you, Mayor Carlton, to Councillor Winters. We've had a good conversation. We actually think we can probably do a better job with this report to meet that need. There's also something that I think myself and the team will look at with the renewal of our website to see whether we might be able to get some stuff actually on the website as well that might offer a little bit more detail. So we'd still bring this report back with that detail that the clerk has just indicated, but maybe look at some sort of tracking mechanism on the website that can allow that ready access. So I think staff would agree we can make more of this report.
Just as I was listening to the comments, there's something that pops in my mind is something more of a bold buzzword kind of chart, for the public and ourselves. We're looking for a specific item we don't have to go back by the date. We can find something by an item would be a suggestion, but it's good. I mean, I like it. It gives us a follow-up, but just wondering if there's improvement that we can do.
I think watch this space. The next one will look different.
Okay, I have a question then. Do we need a motion on each item as we go through to receive? Okay. So a motion to receive 9.4.1 for information. Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Day. There's no further discussion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. 9.4.2, back to you, Councillor Winters.
Thank you. And again, good report. I'm not questioning the quality of the report or the necessity of the report. One of the things I just, when I was going through the agenda, it seemed to me like it was kind of buried within the consent agenda. And it spends money on a water system and just whether it should be brought out as a staff report, as a standalone with just a little bit of a description discussion about it. I mean, it just, to me, procedurally wise, looked like it was kind of hidden in a consent, and the residents of Shell Lake should know whether they pay attention to what we're doing in our agendas or not. But hey, we were working on your water system. There was an issue there. We spent some money. It is what it is. I just thought it seemed like it was kind of buried within the consent and maybe should be brought out to a staff report under a department if we could.
So through you, Mayor Carlton, I will let Kevin speak to this, Mr. Ficken speak to this briefly, just to provide that clarity. The reason we put it on the consent was simply it's something that's happened, and we look forward to the opportunity that council members may have to pull items from consent to ask exactly those sort of questions. This is a sort of report could have fallen into both categories. Quite happy to answer the questions, and so I will let Mr. Ficken just briefly summarize this one.
We got it figured out. Through you, the mayor, to Councilor Winters' question, great question. Yes, normally this would be a staff report, but on the pretext of the purchasing policy, this was perhaps qualified as an emergency. Main source of heat went down at the Shell Lake Water Treatment Facility. Aqua responded in kind with space heaters as a temporary measure. Aqua informed the township, myself personally, the day of that the heater went down. Responded with the contractor coming out, which thought was a quick and simple repair, turned out to be a full heater replacement. So yes, normally this would be most likely a staff report, but in terms of emergency repair replacement, it was placed on the consent item just for council's awareness.
Okay, thank you for that. And I will have a mover and a seconder to receive that one for information. Councillor Schuldeis, Councillor Winters, all in favor. That is carried. 9.3.1, Councillor Schuldeis.
Okay, I'm doing this one on a whim. On page 53 of our agenda tonight, you'll find a resolution passed by the Township of Georgian Bay where they requested that the Government of Canada increase the tax credit from $3,000 to $10,000 for volunteer firefighters and search and rescue volunteers. We have a great group of firefighters with the Inner Township Fire Department that I think should continue to be recognized. And I wonder if this is something I wanted to put in front of council that we should consider supporting and recognizing their efforts with our Inter Township Fire Department.
Okay, perhaps we could have a motion to that effect that we will provide support to that. So you will move that, Councillor Schuldeis. Can I have a seconder then? Councillor Day? Are there any further questions on that item? I will call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Go ahead.
It's not that I'm necessarily opposed, but I read it and being a board member, I mean, I was a member of the Inner Township Fire Department, right? And they do great work, don't get me wrong. Back in the day, I had actually petitioned the provincial government to say, listen, give them something small and even look at a reduction in license plate tabs yearly for that sort of thing and whatnot. And there was no recognition whatsoever. But as I read this, and we're not volunteers anymore. They're paid employees, right? And it's a job, it's a stepping stone. It's a really tough one for me, but I think you're going to support it, but I think it'll die. That's been typical my response over the years, right? So I read it. I think it's great, but let's not give false hope to a bunch of people watching this tonight that they're gonna have a few more dollars in their pockets, because I don't think it's gonna happen.
Thank you for those comments, and that vote carries on that item. Councillor Day, 9.3.6.
Yes, I am also not one for expecting instantaneous change, but this one did catch my eye regarding the affordability of water and wastewater systems in rural and small urban municipalities. And as I reread this, I did not double check if we have ever responded to the County of Renfrew's initial letter. So if somebody knows that we have, please just stop me now. But I would like to discuss the possibility of moving this one. Do I need to put it on the floor first? So I'd like to move that we support the correspondence from the County of Renfrew regarding affordability of water and wastewater systems in rural and small urban municipalities, advocating at provincial and federal levels for the government to make them aware that wastewater systems are financially unsustainable as they are, and seeking further funding. And I'll just leave that there. If someone would second that, that would be amazing. And if not, that's okay.
Do I have someone willing to second that? Deputy Mayor Pringle? Does staff have any further information on this, or this is something?
That's no, would be the short one to you, Mayor Carlton. We don't have the original letter that this motion speaks to at this point. So we got circulated on the support, but we didn't get circulated on the initial letter. We can certainly make every effort to get that initial letter and bring it back, perhaps to council, if that would be something that would be which would be a benefit.
Okay, so perhaps Councillor Day, I would suggest that the motion be that we have staff look up that original, bring it back so that we can read the whole thing and see exactly what it is.
I would be grateful for that, because I feel like this is one of our bigger costs moving ahead over the next few years, looking at our water treatment systems. And like Councillor Winters wisely said, I'm not expecting an instantaneous change, but small pressure over time from multiple places can make a difference over time.
Okay, so
If I can,
Yeah.
just before you pass that one, and I'm not going to try and discourage you from passing that recommendation, and we can do that. But it might be suitable to just provide a quick update that we have submitted a delegation request in partnership with many other municipalities in Grey County. I think we've got 5 in Grey County that are joining together to make a delegation to the infrastructure minister at the Good Roads conference coming up. In regards to infrastructure, rural infrastructure, and one of the threads that we picked up in there is water treatment and water supply systems, and so that is one of the areas of focus. If we're successful in getting that delegation request responded to positively, that would be a conversation we'll be taking forward with the Minister of Infrastructure. I think that would be in addition to writing in support for something along these sorts of lines, and I'm making a massive assumption that that is roughly the intent of the initial letter that's behind the scenes here. But I did want to just quickly share that we are hoping to move this topic forward at the ministerial level over coming weeks.
Excellent, thank you.
okay, so just to be clear, are we giving direction to bring back the initial Renfrew one, or are we moving ahead with support on this? We just want direction to bring the other back. Do we need a motion to give direction in that manner? Looking to the clerk to see if you know what the motion is now.
Yes, through you, Mayor Carlton. So the motion that was on the floor did indicate direction to staff for a letter of support. So if the mover and seconder would be comfortable with withdrawing that motion, then we can have direction to staff to bring back the resolution passed by Renfrew County on a future agenda for consideration of council.
Do we need a mover and a seconder for that direction? Okay. Okay,
I withdraw my motion.
Yeah, I'll withdraw too.
okay. So now we need a motion for giving the direction to get the Renfrew report.
I move that we get the information from the County of Renfrew report.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, and I will call the vote. All in favor? Okay, that one is carried. Okay, the next one I think is me with 9.3.10. which is expanding the life of fire apparatus. And that has been brought up at ITFD. And I wonder, do we want to show a letter of support or forward this to ITFD for further consideration?
So through you, Mayor Carlton, this is an interesting one, and I read it because I suspected this one might come up as a conversation. It is definitely a conversation we've had around the board. We could table this for a discussion at the board table at the next board meeting, which I think is April the 16th or thereabouts. I think there's one fairly shortly anyway. And then if the board wishes to request its member municipalities to write a letter in support of it, then it would come back to this council at that point. I mean, I think this is we had the back and forth conversation around the insurance at the end of life. So this was a good conversation of budget when a piece of fire appliance, of fire equipment, vehicles largely get, I think it was beyond 20 years, the insurance drops to a replacement value rather than guaranteed new value. So we write a vehicle off age 19. The insurance company will buy us a new vehicle to replace that vehicle. We write a vehicle off at age 21. They're going to give us the value of that vehicle as determined as its depreciated value at that point in time. Our current vehicle replacement cycle is 25 years with an intention to bring it back to 20 years over the next 2 decades. So in that period of time, there will be a number of appliances that will go beyond the 20-year life cycle of equipment. And I believe the intent of the Township of Lanark motion here is to extend, is to place pressure from the provincial level to insurance companies to provide replacement cost insurance beyond the 20-year life cycle of equipment. I have to admit, and I don't know if I can share an opinion, but I'm going to share an opinion. I could go both ways on this one. I think on the one side, the risk is that then we perhaps are extending equipment for longer and longer and longer periods, and not replacing it as quickly as we should. And the second one is insurers never do anything unless you're going to pay them to do it, and so it may actually impact the overall insurance premiums that go up. And so I can go either way, but I think if council has an opinion one way or another, I think it's a good conversation to have. And if you wish to direct it to go back to the board, I think that would be a reasonable place for the conversation to roll out.
Okay, then I would be content with that if it just goes forwarded to the board. So we need a motion for that. So could I have a mover and a seconder in that, please? Councillor Day, Councillor Schuldeis. Is there any further comments on that item? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. And the last item, 9.3.11. I pulled that one because I like in their declaration of a climate change is that they have it in their policy to revisit the climate change each term of council as a refresher to everyone. And I like the way they had that all worded. And I guess I really just have a question. Do we have that in our climate change plan already? Or is it just an ongoing process?
I might have a question first to you, Mayor Carlton. Madam Clerk, have we declared a climate change emergency or crisis at any point? So at this point, if we haven't,
have. How about we send this one back for further information? So motion to get further information on this one. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Schuldeis, Deputy Mayor Pringle, all in favor. That is carried. Okay. We got through the consent agenda. Sorry, I just have to find my spot here. Correspondence. Letter from Save Georgian Bay Association, TC Energy Large Pump Storage Plant, Meaford, Ontario. Does any member of council wish to comment on this letter? Councillor Day.
Question perhaps for staff. I wonder, have they contacted and set up a delegation themselves in future weeks? Okay. I do wonder if we, and I think I can hold my comment for our conversation later on, closer to the end of the meeting.
Okay, sorry, I
think a lot of things happened in my head that didn't actually get verbalized there. I I feel like with the TC Energy project or concept, we heard some very educated voices with some very clear information from one perspective tonight. And if we're going to make a decision, I think it would be good to hear some other voices as well when we're moving along. So these folks have been working on a different side of the issue for a long time, and I would be interested in hearing their voices as well before, which is why I know I'm reaching ahead in the agenda right now. I cut myself off earlier before I feel I'm prepared to make a final decision on how I feel about the TC Energy concept at this particular moment in time. And I'll stop there.
okay, I would agree. And Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Carlton, to council, the correspondence does include a offer for them to come and delegate to our council. If you do wish for that, we can certainly reach out to arrange it.
CAO.
And forgive me if I've missed something here through you, Mayor Carlton. I don't believe that there is any request in front of council at this point in time to make a decision whether we are in support, not in support. And I as I'm understanding from the delegation, as this is a concept, our support or lack of support is really quite immaterial at this point in time. It sounds like there are a number of other partners who, including and not least of which is Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, who would have a yay or nay voice long before our support or lack of that. And that's not to say that we should not make ourselves aware of this project. It's a significant project on our doorstep, but I don't think there's any pressure on us to take a position as a township or a council at this point in time, either in support or in opposition to. And I suspect if we did take a position, we've got plenty of time to change our minds between now and then as well. And so if it may be prudent, in fact, to invite various different parties to talk to us about perspectives on this project over time. And I know MEFID is doing a great deal of community work or just kicking off a great deal of community work, and that will no doubt inspire further conversation as well. So I'm not sure there's a pressure for us to take a position at this point in time, but no harm in gathering more information.
Okay, so I'm just skimming through this letter again. They're not really asking to come and speak to us. Perhaps in fairness, we reach out to them and ask if they would wish to come and delegate, and we give that direction for staff to reach out and set that up at a future. Deputy Mayor Pringle.
Thanks, Mayor Carlton. So I'm kind of, as much as we all want to know what's going on and where the proceedings are going, I would really like to be more of a fence sitter right now and see what does transpire instead of trying to jump ahead and 6 months from now saying we want to see Save Georgian Bay, and then 6 months from then we want to see TC Energy again, and then 6 months from then we want MEFID here, right? So this whole project's a long way down the road yet, and there is a lot of information to come through it, and we all are invested in it. But I would really like to maybe just kind of hold off for a little bit and see what all comes out of it before we make a decision, because we're going to be basing a decision on hopefully all the facts when they come out, not speculation from day to day. That's where I would like to see us go, and that's just my own opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Scholz.
My opinion is that if we want to be fully informed on this project, although we're not making a stamp tonight on what's happening, I think that's important to hear both sides of the story and be fully informed on what's happening. I appreciate that we've had TC Energy tonight and it was a nice presentation. I think it's important to hear from Save Georgian Bay and get an understanding from both sides of the story. So I would support Councillor Day in that, yeah, we should totally have Save Georgian Bay or reach out to them and see if they'd be wanting to come and present to us.
Thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Carlton, just in the second last paragraph of their letter, they state that if any further information would be useful, they would be happy to make a presentation to our council in person.
Okay. So do I have a mover and a seconder on that? No. Councillor Day? Councillor Scholz? Okay. And any other comments on that item? All in favor? Opposed? I'm on the first side, sorry. So that carries 3-2. All right, we are now on to committee reports. And the first one, the recommendation is that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on March 13th, 2020. Let me back up and see if anybody has something to pull off of that before I read that whole thing. Deputy Mayor Pringle.
Or, Carol, are we pulling or do we go through each one individually on the committee of the
No,
whole?
we pull.
Oh, so I would like to pull 12.1.6.
Which is
Do you, Madam Mayor? That's
the
pickleball.
CES 2024-002. Okay. Yes. But it's saying less recommendation, and that's not the, so it should be CES. So the recommendation for committee of the whole is that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on March 13th, 2024 be adopted, including recommendations COW 2024-019 to COW 2024-024, less recommendations COW 2024-024. Why didn't I just stop at 2023? Anyway, could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Scholz, Deputy Mayor Pringle. Is there any discussion? I will call the vote then.
Yeah.
Yes,
I do. In the first, yeah.
we're voting on the first part. Then that's okay. So I will call the vote. All in favor? Carried. And then do I need to read the recommendation here first or, okay. So recommendation is that council direct staff to enter into an agreement with Georgian Bluffs Pickleball to develop and sign a 3-year agreement with the Georgian Bluffs Pickleball Club, reflecting the proposal outlined in report CES 2024-002, and that council approve amending the fees and charges bylaw to introduce a new reduced floor rental fee applicable to all 3 arenas in the township for the Georgian Bluffs Pickleball Club bookings for up to 34 hours use each week, which was option 2. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councilor Scholz, Deputy Mayor Pringle. Is there any discussion on this item? Deputy Mayor Pringle, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Carlton. Yeah, so it's amazing what a week will give you to time to think about things and come up with another solution or plan. So I want to put a motion on the floor to come back and relook at what we had decided in option number 2. When I sat down and thought about it and put it all into perspective, I'm as in favor as anybody else to have the arenas be used, get some life out of them the best we can. But where I struggled is when we came to the fact that the pickleball club wants to charge $100 a person per year and give them basically floor time for $6 an hour. I played with the calculator for quite a while the other night there, and if we're going to give somebody floor time and be there 3 days a week for 83 cents an hour per person, I got a problem with that. In my mind, if that's the scenario, we may as well close the doors and lock the doors. So I played with a lot of numbers. I went through a lot of scenarios trying to figure out what's the best avenue to try and move this project forward. I still want to see it go. I still want to see the Georgian Bay Pickleball Club. But what I can't bring myself to is the $100 establishment. What I am proposing, after I sat down and thought about it, is that they can reduce their $100 per person fee to whatever they want to make it be. I know they talked about $20 for insurance. They want to have lessons and instructors and all the rest of it. But I honestly believe we should probably stay with the status quo of $3 per person per visit on the floor time. That way, it gives the same usage to the floor, but we're not going to bury ourselves on debt against an arena. If you can't, I say you can't afford the $3 to play pickleball, I find that hard to believe. You can't do anything for $3 anywhere. Doesn't matter if you go swimming or to watch a ball game, go to the show bowling, whatever. So the easiest way solution I come up with was they changed the overall price to whatever they want to make it be, 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks. But it's still $3 per person per visit. If you have 12 people there in the Kilsyth Arena, that gets you $36, which is close to the floor rate they're paying now. If you go once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, it's going to cost you $3 each time. So that was, to me, the fairest way to make it. I don't want to get into a battle of us trying to negotiate pricing for floor time lower and lower and lower. We're too cheap as it is. Now and I have had this conversation. We are too cheap. And now to try and come back and say we're going to give it to you for $6, if that septic ever goes down or the lights go out or whatever the case may be, we're going to be spending a lot more money than we thought we were going to spend. So that is my proposal, to go that direction. The pickleball club themselves can decide what they want to make of it as far as their fee goes. But on our end of it, I still like that $3 per play idea. I'm just motion I want to put on the floor.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Scholz. And Councillor Day, you have comment?
Just a request to summarize your request again for me in the short version. I was listening to all the details and I lost the original, the nugget.
So the short version is pickleball club can decide whatever fee they want to charge to be a member. That part is good. It's going to cost you $3 per visit to play pickleball in Georgian Bluffs.
CAO.
So through you, Mayor Carlton, so my mind is rushing to how we're going to manage that. So the benefit of having a pickleball club manage this is completely hands off. We don't need to worry about it. They're organizing their own insurance and everything along those sorts of lines. And so if the intent is that we don't discount the floor rate, I can simply go back and say the township is not prepared to discount the floor rate, and we're going to hold our floor rates. Therefore, I can work out what their annual fee would be, and they can figure out what their membership needs to be to pay those floor rates. So if the intent is no discount on the floor rates, I can go back and make that. That could be a recommendation, and I would then go back to the Georgian Bluffs Pickleball Court and say we've brought forward the recommendation. Council has elected to not go through with that, and we're going to retain the floor rates. If the intent is to try and offer some reduced rate, the only challenge with the $3 per person is we're going to be reliant on Georgian Bluffs Pickleball Club both collecting that money and then remitting that money to us. Which isn't impossible to do, but does administratively change the nature of the relationship between the two of us. Where our benefit was I was just going to send them an invoice every month, and they were going to send us some money into the bank account, and away we go. We're not involved in dealing with cash and collecting it and everything else like that. So, perhaps before we go too much further, is the intent to maintain the floor rates?
The intent is not to give it to them for $6.50. So I'm just not prepared to go that low on that. Whatever, if it's $30, $35, because they are going to use it 40 weeks of the year, right? So it is significant. So and whether they can find a happy place in the medium there, like if I'm going to play pickleball once a week for 40 weeks, you're going to charge me $250. It may play, it may not play. If I go 3 times a week for $250, I'll probably be there every time. So I don't know. That was where I was trying to, how do you get to that point? I don't know. The other thought of it for me was they find sponsorship, right? They're a pickleball club. They can find sponsors the same as any hockey team does or whatever, right? So again, I just wasn't convinced that $650 was going to sit good with myself and 99% of the taxpayers in the township. If there's a better ground to do that, I'm more than happy to look at it. It just wasn't going to go with at $650.
So again, not my amendment on the floor, not my motion on the floor, but from an administrative perspective, it's easier if we can set a floor rate and go to them with a floor rate. So I'm more than happy to either go back to the pickleball club and try and negotiate an alternative floor rate, which would obviously increase their membership fee. And I'm able to try and negotiate that and bring it back to council in a few weeks' time at full rates or half rates or 75% rates or I think if there was a desire to see a different rate applied, I can go and negotiate that. I think at $3 an hour, that's going to be difficult administratively to manage. And so I would that one would be difficult. So if there was an amendment that could give staff some direction, either this is the line in the sand, we're not prepared to drop it less than $20 an hour, or full rates, which I think are 24 and 37 or 24 and 36. We're going to charge you full rates. I'm quite happy to go back to the pickleball club and see where they're at.
Thanks for that. Now, so yeah, so for me, in my mind, $3 per person per visit was easy, right? So that was just me looking at it. But again, I'm certainly open to suggestions too, whether we make a 25% reduction in the floor rate or whatever it is. I'm looking for the rest of council here to, jump in and chime in this too. I'm not prepared to let it go for $6.50 an hour.
And if I can very briefly, I would just reflect back. So we worked out what the discount was that we applied for the hockey and skating at Shallow Lake, and it's about a 20% discount that we apply there. So there is some precedent for applying a discount to a sporting group we wish to encourage. So there is a number that's out there already.
Councillor Winters and then Councillor Schuldeis.
Thank you. I think you all in some fashion encapsulated some of my comments. I wasn't here last week, so I apologize, but I did watch the video. Entertaining. But that is my opinion, is we as a council said our floor rates are too cheap. We as a council just passed a budget that stings. And here we are talking about giving a facility away to lose money. And I don't think that's what I'm here for. It needs to break even. We need to treat all our people consistently. And if we give a reduced rate, this is the same rate. If they want to come to us with some sort of fundraising, some sort of other things, but it needs to be a consistent approach across the municipality. And I mean, I still remember the conversations at budget end. Our rental rates are too cheap. So when I came back and watched that and read this, but no, I personally don't support that. I would like to give direction back that the CAA goes back to the pickleball group, which I hope is very successful and it does well. But this is council's position and we're going to treat everybody the same. How do we make that happen?
Councillor Winters, you stole the words right out of my mouth. That was good. Yeah, I think I would use the word equitability. If we're charging someone this rate, why give the floor space away for $6 an hour? Yeah, you stole the words right out of my mouth. Everything you said, I agree with completely. So if we can go back to staff with this and I'll do some discussing and see what we can come up with. I'd be happy to amend.
Any other comments?
I feel like this is a ball of yarn, and if I start tugging, it unravels into other things. But we are talking about fees at another time in the future overall.
So through you, Mayor Carlton, to Councillor Day, yes, the intent is to bring a fee workshop back to council to, Councillor Winters mentioned cost recovery. None of our recreation facilities are on cost recovery at this point, and there is a conversation that needs to be had as to where, as a township, we want full cost recovery, where we maybe want partial recovery, where discounts should be offered, and so on and so forth. So that conversation is coming, and so in some way, shape, or form, this would be revisited at that time. But I hear all the conversation around horseshoe, so I'm quite happy to take any direction back and bring back an alternative number.
I am quite comfortable with the 20%, which is the same as hockey and skating, from what I understand. So that means hockey, skating, and pickleball receive a discount, but other folks do not receive a discount. So not everyone is being treated exactly the same, but that is a another conversation perhaps for later. And in the short term, it would be great, in my opinion, to move ahead with pickleball and make more use of a facility that is underused, with a community partner to help make that possible, or a financial deal to help make that possible.
Thank you. So the motion as amended will be so I've got, so we are withdrawing the current motion. Okay, So then the new motion will be that we are going to ask to have a different rate established with pickleball at 20% off the current fee and service bylaw.
Just before you go there, how about, because I want to just double check that 20%. So how about a discount which is similar to the discount, is the same proportional discount is currently applied to the junior hockey and to the skating.
Consistent with other user groups rates. Let's simplify it.
Okay, do we have that motion down pat now? Can we read it? So we're clear on what we're saying? Just a comment on that original motion, because it is introducing a new reduced floor rental fee applicable to all three arenas. At no point would we ever come that low on Shallow Lake to $6.50 an hour if we were back on that one. Or are we doing it off the current rates in each facility? Just for clarity on that one.
I think the way in which the motion, I believe, is going to be worded provides significant latitude for me to negotiate that. The arena rates, the floor rates of Shallow Lake are significantly cheaper in the summer. They're nowhere near the rates in winter. So obviously there's no ice.
Okay. Through you, Mayor Carlton. So I have amended the existing paragraph slightly to read that council approve amending the fees and charges bylaw to offer a reduced floor rental fee consistent with discounts offered to other user groups applicable to all three arenas in the township for the Georgian Bluffs Pickleball Club bookings for up to 34 hours use each week.
So that doesn't really reflect all users, and I guess I come back to roller derby, or do we have a contract with them? Do they get a special rate?
So through you, Mayor Carlton, I think, and again, not wanting to overcomplicate this one and unravel that ball of yarn that I think Councillor Day was mentioning. At this point, we are thinking specific to pickleball and unravel the ball in another meeting around the fees that we recoup.
Okay,
so
thank you.
perhaps, Madam Clerk, it could be that the CAO be directed to return to Georgian Bluffs Pickleball to negotiate an alternative rate consistent with the rates charged to existing user groups.
Is everybody clear on that and okay with that motion? Okay, so mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Schuldice. There's no further discussion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Oh, sorry. Okay. I was forgetting that. Okay, so we voted on the amendment. Now we're back to the main motion. I will call the vote there. All in favor? And that is carried. Perfect. Okay. Staff reports. Development and infrastructure. So the recommendation is that report DEV 2024-016 annual drinking water system summary be received for information. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Winters, Councillor Day. I will turn it over to our manager of infrastructure and engineering to speak.
Thank you. And to the Mayor Carlton and to members of council, I'll be brief with this. I've prepared a quick slideshow summary just in terms of the reporting requirements for Ontario Regulation 170. So under the Safe Drinking Water Act is Ontario Regulation 170 or OREG 170, which is the Drinking Water Systems Regulation, and it provides the parameters of owners and operators of the drinking water systems to supply water to the public, and they have the responsibility to ensure that the water is safe to drink. So just a few summaries of the requirements. There's, as you can see with the chart below, it's a little bit smaller, but we're going to focus on section 11 is schedule 22. Section 11 is the sampling requirements of OREG 170, which is the microbiological testing requirements and the chemical testing requirements. And then schedule 22 is the annual reports of what would be required in those annual reports. So if you go into the summary requirements of section 11, it can be further broken down into a brief description of the drinking water systems, the equipment used, any applicable summary reports, spill action if applicable. 2023, there was none, and a summary of the sampling parameters, microbiological, operational chemical tests, turbidity, raw water samples, and the treated water samples. So just a very high level overview of some of the tables of the sampling requirements broken down per system. So we have East Lytton, Oxenden, Potawatomi, and Shallow Lake. Table 4 is your inorganic parameters. So that would include such things as arsenic, mercury, fluorides. There was no exceedance in 2023. Going over to table 5 is lead testing requirements. I have to specify that there is a reduced scheduling requirement for the municipality that we do not have to do private plumbing lead samples, only distribution samples on a biannual occurrence. So I do have to make a quick correction where it says Potawatomi and Shallow Lake, there was no lead testing completed in the distribution sample, just because that bi-yearly sample. However, with East Lytton and Oxenden, 2 distribution for samples were taken for lead, and they were below the method detection limit. Potawatomi and Shallow Lake, they will be sampled for lead in the winter of 2024 and the summer of 2025. So we'll see those reporting summaries in the 2024 summary. Table 6, organic parameters. So that includes chemical parameters such as benzene, carbon tetrachloride, trihalomethanes. Again, there was no exceedances of the maximal allowable concentrations. So under schedules 22 is the reporting requirements. Just in general, list of the requirements of the acts. So the drinking water permits and the municipal drinking water licenses, any corrective actions that may have occurred, and any reporting summaries happened as well. So let's go to the next slide. So everything's broken down again by the water systems, East Lytton, Oxenden, Potawatomi, Shallow Lake. So the facilities were completed with a Ministry of Environmental and Conservation and Parks inspection, and they report back on a score out of 100%. So East Lytton, their score of 100%, there was no corrective actions and no self-reported incidences. Oxenden, score of 100%, again, not applicable to the non-compliance and the self-reported incidences. Potawatomi, I do have to comment on that there was a slight non-compliance where Aqua did not meet the raw water testing parameters. Aqua took immediate evasive actions, and as you can see with the self-reported incidences, they met their monthly, so they took a additional monthly sample. They addressed through staff follow-up and education, and they've reviewed their sampling calendar. So that satisfied all the MECP requirements for the non-incident. Again, 99.34 of the score out of 100. Shell Lake, again, 100% in terms of operationals, and there was no compliances and no self-reported incidences or corrective actions. Go to the next slide. So just on these reports, next steps will be that any public can make an inquiry. The township will provide the reports in additional formats if needed. I will work alongside with our clerk to ensure that the reports are AODA compliant, and then we will post them on the website for the public view. In terms of the second memo that was that's below the staff report, I want to just take this time to reflect on the leak mitigation, the leak detection and mitigation program, working alongside with Aqua. So just on that, Aqua has been actively seeking leaks throughout the system, more importantly on East Linton. If you recall, during the budget deliberations and even during the East Linton Water Master Plan with GSS Engineering, the East Linton system is pervious to leaks. Leaks are #1 prone, and loss of water also means loss of revenue for the township. So Aqua has been fairly proactive, and throughout the 2023 and into the early years of 2024, Aqua has identified several leaks on the East Linton system. I wanted to focus on the most recent one at 318856 Ray Road 1 East Linton. And it was a fairly significant leak at 2.62 liters per second. And that was identified on January 25th and remediated. So we can go to the next slide. So what I mean by that is, in this slide here is table 3, summary from actually schedule 22 of our 2023 summer report, which is taking the average daily flows of the treated water and the total volume, or sorry, the maximum flows. So for comparison purposes, if you look at 2023 February average flows and maximum flows, we have a average flow of 797 cubic meters per day, and our maximum flow is 880 cubic meters per day. So with the active leak in mitigation and rehabilitation on Grey Road 1, we go into this year's February data for 2024, which is shown on the next slide. So from February 1st to February 29th, the average daily flow was approximately 609 cubic meters per day. And the maximum daily flow was approximately 677 cubic meters per day. So that represents about 243 cubic meters per day reduction from the 2023 average flow and 188 cubic meters per day decrease from the average daily flow observed on February 23rd. So just to put that in perspective, that's about an Olympic-sized swimming pool every 10 days being filled up. So that's almost about 37 Olympic pools per year in savings, just from that one leak alone. So I just want to take that time to express gratitude working with Aqua and our working relationship, and Aqua and township staff will be actively seeking these leaks and mitigating them as quick as possible. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Day.
I almost hate to ask. I'm really so happy to see the leakage getting fixed, and that is a lot of water being conserved, which is beneficial from all aspects of managing a municipality. Do we have any sense of how much is still leaking?
Yes, and to the mayor, to Councillor Day, there is one active leak still going on Indian Acres Road, I believe. Yes, and Aqua is estimating that at 1.4 liters per second. So there is one active leak still. Unfortunately, Aqua can't really pinpoint where this leak is right now. but they are still trying to search out the leak, and we are trying to narrow it down to a specific area where we can rehabilitate.
And through you, Mayor Carlton, just to add to Mr. Fickens' answer there, response there. Well, once that leak's fixed, we'll then have and we've got a few days of flow, we'll understand how much more is leaking from the system. The reality of water systems is they do all leak. It's just that there's a threshold beyond which it becomes intolerable. So I think 7% is about the industry ideal. If you can get it to 7% or less loss, you're probably doing okay. There's always going to be some loss from the system. The point of this is we won't know where we got any more big leaks until we fix the next big leak, and then there'll be another leak. These things do spring leaks every now and again. So we will do our best to keep on top of it and keep council updated.
That's fantastic. I appreciate it because I remember being very surprised just with the new information to me about how much that particular system was losing. And I appreciate the updates about the good changes and just love that context of the bigger picture of where we're standing overall. But by no means does this diminish my appreciation of the hard work that you've done already with Aqua to get this leakage more under control.
Any other questions? I have one, and I'm hoping somebody has an answer. I remember that when I first got on to council, we got reports on 7 water systems. Now, 3 of them were classed as the office here, Kemble, and Derby, the systems that were in those individual. And I'm looking to Councillor Winters and wondering if he has any answer for me as to why those no longer appear here.
I'm not sure why they don't appear, but they're considered small drinking water systems versus the large drinking water systems that we're talking about here tonight. But just to put things in perspective, what Kevin said there, he used the Olympic-sized swimming pool as an example. But I think if you look at the flow rates, what you were losing in East Linton is exactly what you're putting out per day in Shallow Lake. Right? Just to put that in perspective of what was going on there, right? So.
And just to you in the minute, so as Councillor Winters just stated, those would be small, I believe they would be classified as small non-municipal facilities, meaning that they're just a private system. If I can.
And I think Aqua, if I'm not mistaken, well, they used to, they would still bring you in monthly summaries and stuff like that. And I think they were just kind of thrown into agenda packages. They were never really discussed, but they are public facilities. So the reporting requirements, the sampling requirements are a lot less. That's one of the reasons why this municipality has postings up that there's high sodium in the water is because of that process.
So long as that's still being taken care of. I just didn't know why those disappeared because we used to see them in the monthly, going back to standing committees when we had whatever standing committee that appeared on. So thank you very much. And if there's no other comments or questions here, I will call the vote. All in favor. That is carried. So the next item then, recommendation is that report DEV 2024-017 East Linton Water System Leak Detection and Mitigation be received for information. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Winters. Is there any discussion on this one? And I'm thinking we have all the information we've already received on that one. So I will call the vote. All in favor. And that is carried. We have no zoning bylaws, no other bylaws, no unfinished business, new business, volunteer of the year program. We're deferring that one to April 10th. Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition Partnership. Make you read this one. The recommendation is whereas medical isotopes are used by Canada's healthcare sector for the diagnosis and treatment of health conditions such as cancer and heart disease, and whereas the global demand for isotope supply is growing and the Greybush region is home to Bruce Power, a large medical isotope producer, and whereas the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council announced its goal to double isotope production capacity in Canada by 2030, and whereas the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition formed a public-private partnership in 2023 and is seeking regional partnerships to support, advocate for, and advance the production of medical isotopes. And whereas the Township of Georgian Bluffs heard a delegation by the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition Partnership at their Committee of the Whole meeting on March 13th, 2024, and whereas an invitation has been extended to the Township to partner with the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition, and whereas the Township deems it beneficial to support the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition and its mission, now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to complete the partnership application on behalf of the Township, and that one member of council or staff be appointed as a representative on the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Shouldice. I will turn it over to Deputy Mayor Pringle to provide comment. This is your notice of motion.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mayor Carlton. Yeah, as having had the opportunity to go to the Southwestern Ontario Coalition Forum that we had there a couple 3 months ago.
Yep.
It was a very good day. It was good to know what is happening in basically our areas in Bruce County, and the opportunities that are there coming before us with the cancer treatments and isotopes and all that is new wave material coming forward that's really nice to see in our backyard. It'd be nice to keep it in our backyard. And work with them to make this all happen. I just remember the one point there that when they said that they take the isotopes out of Bruce Nuclear, they have 7 days to manufacture and have it used, and it leaves Bruce Nuclear and goes to Germany to manufacture to come back to Canada. That stuck with me ever since they said that. And so do you think about the time savings we'd have if we could do that here and use it here and be an area that is looked upon to have the opportunity to get cancer treatments in Owen Sound or wherever that town may be in Georgia or Grey Bruce. That is really what I thought was intriguing. I think it's a great initiative, and they are asking to have someone sit on the board. And if nobody else is interested, I'd gladly let my name stand to be on that board. I really thought it was one of the best conferences I've been doing in a long time, and it's really nice to see it happening in our area, and I'd like to see more happen. And that's really why I put this forward. Go ahead.
Thank you. Any other comments? I would say I totally support this because it's not just bringing that back to be for the isotopes to finish whatever it is they need to do here. It's to get the cancer treatments and not have people have to go out of our area to get that. And it's the added employment benefits that would benefit our area as well. So there's no other comments. I will thank you for putting your name forward unless somebody else wants to. And do we need amendment to add Deputy Mayor Pringle's? Okay, so could I have a mover and a seconder to amend the motion in that way? Councillor Shouldice? Councillor Winters? There's no further comments on that. I will call the vote. It is carried, and back to the original motion. I will call the vote there. All in favor? That is carried. So the next one is my motion. So I actually have to pass that over to you. Mine's not as long as his.
So this is whereas the Township of Georgian Bluffs heard a delegation by Multi-Municipal Energy Working Group at their Committee of the Whole meeting on March 13th, 2024. And whereas an invitation has been extended to the Township to join the Multi-Municipal Energy Working Group, and whereas the Township deems it beneficial to participate in the Multi-Municipal Energy Working Group. Now, therefore, be resolved that the Council hereby appoints one member of Council be appointed as a representative on the Multi-Municipal Energy Working Group. I need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Winters, Councilor Shouldice, and I will turn this over to Mayor Carlton for discussion.
Thank you. And my reasoning in bringing this one forward, I know we used to be on when it was the Multi-Municipal Wind Turbine Working Group, and it was felt that that didn't apply to us. But this is expanded out into other energy and the battery storage systems in particular. And finding out that one's going to go 150 meters away from our boundary and in the municipality of Meaford, and it's going to be our fire department that has to go out and fight that. I think we want to be there at that table to get more information all along the way so that we're not getting caught kind of after the fact, finding out about it the way we did on this one. And I would look to anyone else for comments, or if someone else wants to put their name forward for that committee, fine. If not, then I would go there. So.
All right, further comments from council? Councillor Day.
I feel, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because many of you have been on council for longer than I have. I feel like when this group formed, it was not just about wind turbines, but it was anti-wind turbines. And I am very much for learning more about all the new sources of energy and storage methods for energy in our more carbon neutral future. I just want to make sure that the ways we're finding that information comes from balanced sources where decisions aren't made in advance. And when I was a little, like, I wondered when and I should have asked, I wasn't clear where their information was coming from in their last presentation, like the source of the information that was provided. So I have some concerns. I also consider what we've been talking about in other aspects of the evening in terms of our finances and overall budget, and as the more committee council is a cost as well in terms of remuneration and mileage. So these are some thoughts that I've had. I realize there's some very different opinions around the horseshoe, but I wanted to make sure I just wanted to make sure that these perspectives were also presented at the table.
So one thing I should add there, I found out that these meetings are all virtual now, so mileage does not become an issue. I don't disagree that perhaps there was a definite slant on some members of that committee before, but I think when we're not there, we're not getting any information. And I think we have a responsibility to our residents to be available to get all that information and bring it back to this council table. So that would be why I think we should be there. It just not getting the information, finding about something after the fact that could have a huge impact on our fire department. I don't think that's acceptable going forward for our residents.
Follow up, yeah.
I completely agree that we should be informed. I'm just not yet convinced this is the best way for us to be informed. I really like to know where statistics and information comes from, and that wasn't available in the presentation that they gave us the other day. And I really, with the TC Energy project, I really appreciated the SON going through an independent process with folks who were trained in making those assessments about whether or not the Georgian Bay would be impacted by the TC Energy project. So I feel like I would like more information about who is on this committee and where their information is coming from before I feel comfortable supporting this motion.
So I think that then is our responsibility, whoever is a member of that committee, to ask those questions there. I have talked to some of the other municipal council members who are on that committee, and they feel it's very valuable for the information. But they acknowledge you have to ask where it's coming from. But if you're not there to start with, how do you even get to ask the question?
Yeah, good comments, Member Carlton. And I do believe there's 7 local municipalities that have a representative on that committee. And again, if we have a voice at the table, we should learn more from that voice. Now, whether we decide down the road that it's not the place for us to be, then, we back away from it. But right now, yeah, we had the presentation, we took part of what we got out of the presentation, but I think there's more to learn. And obviously, their idea is it's a bigger picture too. I think if we don't, for the cost of having a voice there to learn what we can, moving forward down the road, if it's not right, then we'll get out of it. But right now, we don't know anything more than what we hear on the radio and read in the news and stuff like that. So I'm for someone being on that committee, just so we have a voice for Georgian Bluffs, is where I'm going. That's what I see of it anyway. So I'd need an amendment then. Does anybody else wish to be on the committee besides not be on it, to run against the mayor on the seat?
Mayor, step aside.
Yeah. If there's nobody else, I'd have to make an amendment then to the motion to have Carlton be the delegate to that. And you mover and seconder. Councilor Winters, Councilor Scholdice. Any discussion? Vote, all those in favor? Okay, that is carried. And then back to the main motion. I need a mover and a seconder. I do have. I'm going to call a vote. Any more discussion on the main motion? We're good. Call a vote. All those in favor on the main motion. That is carried. Good.
Thank you.
Keep me in practice.
Forgot that. So does any member wish to provide a notice of motion? Seeing none, we will move on to closed session. The recommendation that Council of the Township of Georgian Bluffs move into closed session at 6:56 p.m. in the council chambers with the manager of legislative services / clerk, deputy CAO / director of corporate services, and CAO remaining in the room to discuss 18.1 personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, open meeting exemption B of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, staffing update. 18.2 litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, for an update concerning ongoing litigation, open meeting exemption E of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, verbal update on ongoing litigation. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Day. Any discussion? Call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. We are now in closed session. So Okay, so we are now back in open session at 7:28 PM. Council moved into closed session under open meeting exemptions B and E of section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001. As a result of closed session discussions, no action was taken. Our confirming bylaw, that bylaw number 2024-017, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on March 20th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, signed with the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Winters, Councillor Schuldeis, is there any discussion? I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Date of the next regular meeting is April 3rd, Committee of the Whole at 5 PM. There's no further business. I will now call for adjournment of this meeting. Deputy Mayor Pringle, Councillor Day, all in favor? Is carried.